the reason that we need to do things like have a domestic violence death review here in the province of Saskatchewan is to actually get answers to that question about why we do have such a problem here. I think one of the things we can look at is the fact that there is currently no plan to address intimate partner violence in the province of Saskatchewan. We are the only province in Canada that doesn't have such a plan. If you look at some of the other provinces such as Ontario and BC that have actually done a lot of work to address the issue of intimate partner violence, including public education, you see far lower rates in those areas. I think community organizations had been asking for this for some time. I know my organization, PATHS, had been asking for a review, but I believe it was a rash of very horrific intimate partner homicides that occurred around 2014, and specifically the family of Shirley Parkinson that went public and called for domestic violence death reviews to occur in order to prevent future tragedies. Unfortunately, this isn't an issue that we can legislate away, and it's not something that, although services such as women's shelters and counseling agencies are crucial to provide services for victims, I think it's really important that intervention take place before these terrible tragedies happen. So what we really need to do is provide public education so that every person knows what the warning signs are and how to safely intervene to prevent domestic homicide from occurring. And that and only that can really bring our numbers down. It does call for action. There are a number of recommendations in certain thematic areas, one of which is public education with an eye to prevention. There's talk about having additional services for perpetrators or those at risk of perpetrating violence. So if we could, when we see the warning signs happening, and in court today when we're hearing the story that unfolded between John and Lisa Strang, we see many of the classic symbols that are symptoms, I guess, that are there, the red flags that occur in so many of these domestic homicide cases. If people around them had known and had known how to respond or who to report to, this incident and others like it could have been prevented. Isolation. So one of the things we're hearing this morning is that right from the time that John and Lisa were married, her family didn't like him. So there was a rift right there from what would probably be her main support system. We further heard that people in the community were not a fan of John. He was not a likable person. We heard that he told someone that he fantasized about killing people. A coworker, he told, he thinks about killing people. If those people had chosen to report to the authorities, suggest that he get counseling, and not to lay blame on anyone, because the fact is, we just don't know how to respond. And in Saskatchewan, maybe it's that we still feel that this is a private family matter and that it's none of our business, when the reality is violence is everyone's business. One of the most common features in virtually every domestic homicide is the fact that people around the victims and the perpetrator were aware that there were issues, but they didn't know how to safely intervene. In Ontario, they have two programs that were developed through recommendations by their domestic violence death review. One was called Neighbours, Friends and Families, and the other is Make It Our Business. And the goal of those programs was to educate people who may be in a position to hear or see warning signs of intimate partner violence occurring, and train them in ways to safely offer support and intervention to hopefully prevent such circumstances from occurring. Stay tuned for the recommendations coming from the Domestic Violence Death Review panel, and what we really want to see is the government actually taking action on those recommendations.